It's hard being a young player in the NBA that isn't quite ready for the physicality or pace of play at the next level immediately, because even though it's completely reasonable to need time to develop, they don't always get the appropriate amount of time to do so because patience runs thin pretty quick. With that being said though, these players do have to at least flash some potential early on to get their teams to buy into them in the long term. In today's video, we're going to be discussing 4 players in particular that were teetering on the verge of receiving the bust label due to early struggles in their careers, but have come out this season and proven that not only are they not draft busts, but they're actually becoming really quality players that they were expected to be all along. Before we start though, it turns out a good amount of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but it also very much appreciate it. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first player we'll be discussing today that is finally proving he's not a bust this year is Jayson Suggs of the Orlando Magic. When Suggs was drafted 5th overall in the 2021 draft, he entered the league with a ton of hype, being labeled as the most NBA-ready prospect in that class. He had just helped his Gonzaga team go all the way to the March Madness championship game behind some stellar two-way play. His competitive drive and natural leadership skills were on full display on the biggest stage, and the Magic were in need of a player who could ignite a winning culture, so it seemed like a perfect fit. The issue, though, was that Suggs just could not get anything going on the offensive end in his first 2 seasons, and he also struggled quite a bit with injuries, which definitely didn't help. As a college player, he admittedly was only ever an average shooter from deep, but he was really good at getting to the basket and finishing in the paint, and was projected to be an under-control floor general type of guard. In his first 2 seasons, though, he looked lost on the offensive end of the floor, not being able to scare defenses with his jumper at all, and then because he couldn't keep defenders honest, it became a lot more difficult for him to get to the basket. His defensive impact was pretty solid at the time still for the most part, but not to the point where it made up for his struggles on the other end. This year, however, Suggs has fully regained the confidence that he had back in his Gonzaga days and is producing like a next-gen Marcus Smart type of player. His energy on defense, hounding the opposing lead ball handler, sets the tone for the rest of the possession, which has been a huge reason for the Magic being a top 3 ranked defense in the league this season. Then offensively, he's actually making defenses respect his jumper, knocking down a respectable 37% of his threes, and that has led to him being way more effective everywhere else. He plays with the type of passion that can be contagious to his teammates, he does the little things a winning team needs from a guard, and his progressing efficiency is helping everything else fall into place for an emerging Orlando team. The next player that has been beating the bust allegations this season is Obi Toppin of the Indiana Pacers. Toppin was originally drafted 8th overall by the New York Knicks back in 2020, but from the jump, it was never really a good fit for him. Their best player even at the time was Julius Randle, who plays the same position as Toppin, and after some murmurs about the Knicks potentially trading Randle at the time, his impending breakout season happened during Toppin's rookie year, so that never came into fruition. Thus, Toppin's role was never fully fleshed out in the rotation, and the skill set that he provided didn't even really match the game plan of how the Knicks like to play, since Toppin dazzled in college in a fast-paced, up-tempo dynamic, getting out in transition and using his impressive athletic tools to generate easy buckets at the rim, but the Knicks literally played with the slowest pace in the NBA that year, preferring to slow things down and operate out of half-court sets. Toppin's minutes fluctuated a ton in his 3 seasons there. He was oftentimes relegated to being a spot-up shooter despite barely being an average shooter, and if I'm being completely honest, I don't think it would have ever made it very far in his career if he stayed in New York. So when the team traded him to Indiana this offseason, it was probably the best thing that could have possibly happened to him. He's now on the team that plays at the fastest pace in the NBA. The Pacers love to get out in transition and hunt for quick, easy baskets, and his explosive athleticism, work as a cutter, and overall scoring talent is being more properly utilized. Last season, Toppin shot just 45% from the field, which for a forward isn't that great. This season, though, he's shooting an incredible 61% from the field, leading the NBA in two-point field goal percentage as well, making 78% of his two-point shots, and he's scoring a career-high 13 points per game, which can be directly attributed to playing in a fast-paced environment alongside a playmaker like Tyrese Halliburton. The next player putting the bust label behind him this year is Coby White of the Chicago Bulls. Now, I'll admit, White was never necessarily on the verge of falling victim to being a full-on bust like some of the others on this list, but his career was definitely trending in the wrong direction heading into this season. He was drafted 7th overall back in the 2019 draft to a Bulls team that was still rebuilding, and in his first 2 seasons, he was showing promising potential as a scoring talent, despite typical inconsistencies that come from the play of young guards. But then in 2021, a noticeable shift happened that kind of pushed White to the side. That was the year that the Bulls made it back to the playoffs after the addition of DeMar DeRozan, and White was actually shooting the ball more efficiently that year, but his overall scoring output went down from 15 points per game to about 12 per game. Then last season, White's production continued to dip even further, scoring fewer than 10 points per game, and he entered this year under some pressure to turn things around fast. With Zach LaVine out due to injury and the Bulls seeming to be on the verge of imminent implosion, he's been getting his chance to show what he can do, and he's been making the absolute most of his opportunity, showing the Bulls that he should definitely be a part of their long-term plans. On the season as a whole, he's averaging a career-high 17 points per game, shooting an incredible 43% from 3 on the highest volume of attempts of his career, which is already impressive, but when you look even further, it gets even better. Since LaVine's injury, he's been averaging a whopping 26 points per game, shooting absolutely lights out, making 51% of his shots and 53% of his threes. When you're thrust into a go-to role, your scoring output should always increase unless your name is Jordan Poole, but the fact that he's even more efficient in this role is enough to inspire confidence that he could be a damn good scorer in the league for years to come, after a few down seasons in a row prior to this. And finally, the last player we'll be discussing that has put to rest all of the bust allegations is Jaylen Johnson of the Atlanta Hawks. Johnson wasn't a lottery pick like the other players discussed, but he was taken in the middle of the first round in 2021, still expected to develop into a solid two-way wing. His rookie season was spent mostly in the G League, only playing in a handful of NBA games. Then in the offseason after his rookie year, he got a procedure done on his knee to address tendinitis issues, which may have had something to do with the fact that he then struggled the following season when he was getting more NBA minutes off the bench. Through 2 seasons, he really hadn't shown much to lead anyone to believe that he could be a difference maker at the NBA level, but this season he looks healthier and more confident than ever and has even snagged the Hawks' starting small forward job because of how well he was playing. Johnson went from a 5-point scorer last season to averaging 14 points this year, shooting 59% from the field and 42% from 3. Johnson's knee being back healthy has been huge for his effectiveness because he is an incredibly bouncy athlete who soars around the rim for high-flying finishes as a cutter and slasher, and the fact that his 3-ball has been falling as consistently as it has opens things up even more for him. Defensively, he's also been one of the few bright spots on a Hawks team that struggles on that end of the floor, as a wing player that can switch onto multiple different positions and use his length and mobility to hold his own. When John Collins got traded away, the Hawks needed someone to step up, and Johnson has made the most of it and isn't looking back. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about these players that are breaking out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.